Welcome to Bite Sized, Insights from New York State PTA, the podcast where the heart of PTA leadership gets a mic.
From the hilarious meeting moments to the heartwarming wins. And yes, even a few oopsies. We're bringing you the unfiltered truth of PTA life.
Whether you're brand new to your role or a seasoned pro, this is your space. Your bite-sized dose of insights, inspiration, and connection.
This is Bite Size, Insights from New York State PTA.
Because every story counts, even the ones that could have been an email. Welcome, everyone. We're your hosts, the Leadership Development Team. We're thrilled to have you join us on this journey as we dive into a real, relatable, and sometimes unexpected world of PTA leadership. The purpose of this podcast is simple. We're here to connect, inspire, and support each other and each of you. Whether you're a new PTA leader or a seasoned pro, or even someone who's just curious about what goes on behind the scenes, PTA leadership isn't always easy, but it's incredibly rewarding, and we want to share those rewards and lessons with a few laughs with all of you. This podcast is about building community. It's about creating a space where PTA leaders can come together, share stories, and feel a sense of camaraderie in our shared mission. We'll be offering leadership insights from our own experiences, the moments that have taught us something valuable, the small wins, and even the stumbles along the way. We also want to break down any mysteries about what it means to be involved in PTA leadership. Maybe you're interested, but feel a little intimidated, or you're worried about if you'll truly make an impact. We're here to show you that the leadership can be impactful, accessible, and a lot of fun. It's about making a difference and seeing that difference in our schools and communities. Through these conversations, we hope to inspire you toward personal and professional growth. Being a PTA leader does not have to change every single aspect of your life, just change our schools a little bit. And it changes us too, a bit. We hope that by sharing our experiences, you'll feel more confident and inspired to take on new challenges, embrace all that PTA has to offer. And last but not least, we're here to laugh and enjoy ourselves along the way. Expect plenty of funny stories, rookie mistakes, and memorable moments as we take you behind the scenes. We'll be sharing the lighter side of PTA leadership because, after all, this is a journey worth enjoying. We're here not just building leaders, we're building connections, growing together, and having a great time doing it. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce you to our host, Sonia. I want to start with you. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sonia Varillo. I have the privilege currently of being the New York State PTA treasurer. I live in the suburb of Rochester, New York, and I'm part of the Genesee Valley region. I have two sons who are currently 18 years old. He just recently graduated from high school. And I have a 15-year-old that is currently in 10th grade.
Can you tell us, Sonia, a little bit about what got you started in PTA?
So what got me started in PTA? So I started in PTA when my now 18-year-old son it was right after he finished kindergarten. I was a member of the PTA, but didn't really attend any meetings or anything, but paid my dues and was kept informed and getting the emails of everything that was going on. And it was after his kindergarten year that all of a sudden, towards the end of the year, we started getting messages from the principal and the PTA talking about how they needed officers for next year. And they needed a president and they needed a secretary. These emails kept coming week after week, and the tone was getting more and more stressed as time went on, to the point where they started saying that if they didn't get officers, all of these things, wonderful things that the PTA did would go away. And you don't want that to happen. All of the wonderful, our PTA did, they helped kids find their classrooms during the first days of school. They served as bus cabooses for the first week of school, helping to make sure that the kids get on the right bus. They did wonderful things like hosting, a Halloween party. They did wonderful things like putting together and providing a color yearbook to every student at the end of the year. They coordinated school pictures. So all these wonderful things that our PTA did at the elementary level, they said would go away if they didn't have, an officer structure. So so guilt worked. And I had some prior, other sort of nonprofit experience where I had participated in other groups. And so I reached out to the then president and said, okay, what do you need? So we sat at her house for a couple hours one afternoon and she went through everything. And I said, okay, whatever you need me to do, I'll do. And I ended up being nominated as, president. So literally my first year, I didn't know any, so at that point I'm like, okay, I started scouring the New York State PTA website, the National PTA website. They have a host of great training material. The National PTA website has a local leader kit. They have e-learning courses for every single office. President, vice president would obviously be able to, take advantage of a lot of the president training. They have courses for secretary, for treasurer, all that stuff. So I immersed myself into all of that training. I also connected to my region because I was aware of the region at that point, and they were having roundtable discussions throughout our region where they would have them at a different school, like once a quarter. And so I would go there, and they would just be an open forum where you could just ask whatever question you wanted to. And this was so this was 18, not 18 years ago, but like 15 years ago, way before Zoom and everything became available. So I had to go in person to, ask questions.
I don't think I knew a life before Zoom, but continue.
Yeah, but continue. Yeah. So I learned a lot and I got a lot of training. And then I took advantage of an opportunity to go to the National PTA convention after my first year. And that's where I really leaned into everything PTA and really was very much inspired by the mission of PTA and seeing, people from all over the country and around the world that are part of PTA, because there is a designate, a state level PTA organization for PTAs that are in, all over the world in our armed forces schools. So there is an international PTA connection through the, schools that are on, military bases and things like that. So I thought that was pretty exciting. And just to hear the power of PTA being at the table, in Washington, D.C., in Albany, being a part of discussions about different legislative efforts and advocacy efforts that affect kids, not only in my local neighborhood, but affect kids, all over the country, which was just quite inspiring. So that is what has kept me, I think, involved in PTA. And as my kids have grown and, my oldest is now graduated from high school, I've seen the impact that PTA brings not only to our children as far as how it enriches their educational experience, but me as a parent being more involved in PTA has given me relationships with faculty, administration, teachers that have helped me be a better advocate for my child. My older son was diagnosed with ADHD. My younger son had a learning disability with a reading issue. And so me being active helped them. I was able to be a better advocate and having them get, tested and evaluating and having services available to them that have helped them to succeed, which I think is, you can't replace that kind of, having that kind of experience and those kind of relationships. Made me a better leader. It's made me a better mom, and so forth. So yeah, briefly my story.
Your origin story.
My origin story. Yes. Not quite I left the room and became president, but definitely similar in that vein. So be careful of when you raise your hand.
So we want to make sure that we hear from our other two hosts.
Yes.
Kathleen, tell us a little bit about your origin story. When did you put on the Batman cape?
Well, I was always, volunteered here and there, but when my daughters first started kindergarten, it was more of, a stay-at-home mother type thing. They even had the meetings where every other month were during the school day. So, and I'm a teacher, so there was no way. So I thought I'll never be able to do this. So I would volunteer at the Halloween party, and I just started volunteering more and more. And then COVID hit, and then I was able to stay home for basically a year and a half and teach remotely. So I was able to finally get to be my son's class mother. So I thought, what? It was amazing. I mean, I wasn't allowed to step foot in the school, but still, I never thought I'd be able to do that. So I was like, if I can be class mother, I'm going to run, maybe I'll run to be, on the PTA board. So then the next year I became recording secretary, and then, our board started having all sorts of problems where we were having school of instruction by, regional. And I just saw that when the opportunity arose the next year, I ran to become co-president. I never wanted to see this PTA go through this again. So then I became co-president of the elementary school. And I was like, well, if I'm co-president of the elementary, might as well be co-president of the middle school. So then I was both. And then the year after that, I became co-president of council. So
So
I
you
kind of
drank
just
the
kept
Kool-Aid?
going.
You drank.
What? I was like, well, if I can do this, then I can do that. And then I could do that also. And people are like, "Oh my gosh, council, what are you crazy?" And I always say, like, in our district, the people in council, it was like I don't know, like a child. I thought they like lived in the building or they had like offices. I didn't know what council was. And when we were going through all these problems with our unit, they were really nowhere to be found, no help. So I made it a point to be, I mean, people know who I am. I go to every council event. I still go back to the elementary events, even though I'm not, um, my son's graduated out. I'm always posting on the community Facebook page. Like people know who I am. If there's ever an issue, we run also like district events. Like they know who our board is. So I never wanted to go back to that. These people, these mystery people that people didn't know who they were. And then I don't know, it was I guess in February, I saw the thing came out for New York State PTA. And I was like, well, if I'm doing all this, I might as well try this. It really has been one of the most rewarding and beneficial things. It helps me. I've not only made, great friends, I've met great people. I feel like I'm doing great work, but it's benefited the units that I'm working with.
Oh, that's so awesome, Kathleen. I love it. So remind us, how many kids do you have? What grades are they
Oh,
in?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have 3 children. I have twins. My daughters are on the PTSA board with me. And then my son is in 6th grade in middle school. So kind of like what Sonia said, I wanted to be involved. I wanted people in the school to know who I was. Not that I think I'm so wonderful, but I want, like, I feel that if you are present and people know who you are, you're more likely to, the squeaky wheel, the gets the oil.
It's transparency. They know who you are. They know who to go to.
Exactly.
Yeah, they feel like you care about what's going on for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, just like, and I've become like a lot of their teachers, I've become, personal friends with the admin. I've really gotten to know and become personal friends with. But I'm also a teacher. So when I go into the school, it's almost like I feel like I'm at work.
What's that
I
like? It
walk
must
around
be
like I work there.
tough. That's because it's not your building, right?
No, it's not. No, I teach in New York City, but I feel comfortable in a school. And sometimes the building admin have said to me like, "Oh, that this board member or this PTA member is requesting that. That's so ridiculous." Like, I think sometimes if you know how a school operates, it's helpful when working with parents. I also have to communicate with parents all day long as a teacher, but also administrators. I know I've worked with, I don't know how many administrators as a teacher. So I think that works to like my benefit.
Yeah, because you know what's doable, it's not doable.
Right. Right.
Just to avoid some headaches. You
Yeah.
be a mile away.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. So,
Well, that was awesome, Kathleen. Thank you. And our fabulous Robin.
Hi, my name is Robin, and I come from the city of Yonkers. And how I came on to PTA, it's a long story, but it's not really. When I was growing up, my mom was a worker. She worked all the time. She joined PTA because she joined, but she never went to anything. And anytime there were activities in the school, my mother wasn't able to attend because she was working. And there was another young lady there, and her mom would always come, and everyone would say, "Oh, Robin, is that your mom?" And I was like, "No." "Robin, is that your mom?" I was like, "No, my mom's at work. My mom's at work." So sometimes you don't realize some of the things that kind of it didn't scar me, because when my mother did come to the events that were important to me, they would say, "Oh, Robin, who's that?" And I said, "This is my mom." But so when I had my son, who's now 28, and I said, I knew I was going to be involved in PTA. And when he was in pre-K, I went to a PTA meeting. And when it's funny because no, I didn't walk out the room and become president, but I just raised my hand one time too many. And so I was, and I was just raising my hand because I might have had a question pertaining to the meeting or whatever it was that they were discussing. And one of the old cats, PTA, said, we need her. And they came up to me afterwards and they said, you know what? You really have a lot of insight. We need you on our PTA. And I was like, what? This is the first meeting. And so they said, no, we need you. Would you like to be on this particular committee? So I said, sure, I'll help you out. No problem. And that's how I came to PTA. But one of the things about that PTA meeting, and that's one of the things I always share with the PTA leadership and other parents, what I always enjoyed about that my PTA meetings with my son and my daughter. My daughter's now 23. My son, like I said, is 28. When I would attend those meetings, we heard from the principal. We heard someone from the council representative. We heard from the district representative. We heard from the principal. No, I said the principal. We heard from the various committees. And the president gave a report. So when I walked out of those meetings, I knew anything and everything that was going to happen within my children's school. Everything from soup to nuts. And I would always be the one to tell someone, you need to attend the meeting because they're gonna vote on blah, 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 blah. Or is your child in this grade? Because they're getting ready to the PTA is getting ready to take the kids to whatever. This activity is getting ready to come. And I always tried to make sure I always attended at PTA meeting because I wanted to know what was going on. I'm also nosy. So I wanted to know what was going on and just be on the pulse and on the forefront. So
source of information.
Yes. And comes from, again, I started working on a committee and I realized, I was a working parent and you don't have to, at that time, you don't have to be at every bake sale, be at the school. And I try to share that with parents now. You can still be involved in PTA and not be at the school 24/7. You're not locked into being in school 24/7. So I did that. And then my son left the school, but my daughter was in the school because there's like 5.5 years difference between them. And I continued to serve as a committee member. And I went from one committee to another committee. And then what ended up happening was in my particular school, there are procedures, policies and procedures. And so that's what stops us from walking out the room and becoming president. You have to have done ABC to be considered to be president. So by this particular time, there was only 3 individuals that were part of the PTA community. And while we might have had 20 people on the PTA on the executive board, but only 3 of them were eligible. And I was one of them. And so I might as well have walked out the room and became president because that's really what happened. It was like, well, you do it. And I was like, what? And they was like, no, you do it. And that's how I became president of my daughter in elementary middle school. And I did 1 year and it was okay. And I did 2 years and it was okay. And I was fine with it. They reelected me for the second year. And I was fine. I did my time and I still volunteered. It didn't matter to me. I'd be on the picture committee or whatever have you. I was always someone. I started doing the book fair, just different things that were able to help me. And at the time when my daughter was in school, I was a stay-at-home mom. So then what ended up happening was the person who was elected as president in June or in May, in September, let us know that she's relocating to California. So again, we go back to the policies and procedures of who is eligible. And the only person that was eligible at that time was me. So we had to go before the council and go before the region to see if I could be given the opportunity to serve as president again, because according to our policies and procedure, no one else was eligible. And so we were given the opportunity to have it so that I was able to serve one more time. And after that, I made sure I had everyone come to the meetings and do whatever they need to do because I was not going to serve another year. I said, look, whatever it is you need to do, you do it. Make sure you come to this meeting.
Were they changing the policies and procedures while you were there?
But I was really like, I was done. And then when my my son went to a different school, and I was not an officer, but I was a very much involved PTA parent. I was working at that time, and I just did whatever was needed. You just volunteer because sometimes PTA becomes in your blood. But one of the things I want to say that while my children were in school, the opportunity to serve and go and get more invested in New York State PTA and the region and also the council, I had no desire to do it. I just wanted to serve my PTA. That's all I was focused on. And it wasn't until my daughter graduated, but I was always involved with the council, whatever they needed me to do. I tried to do. I served on committees that were easier for me. So if it was nominated committee, it didn't require a lot for me, fine. If it was bylaws, it didn't require a lot for me, but anything that at that time, and again, this was before COVID, you were going out to 25 different meetings, and I just said, you know what, let me just do these because it's a little easier for my time frame. And then my daughter graduated in 2019, and we all know that COVID came in 2020. And I was still involved as much as I could be. And then in 2022, they were looking for someone to be council president. And I was like, and they were like, Robin, why don't you do it? And I said, what?
Where are the procedures? I need to see the proof.
I said, I don't even have kids in the district. My kids are adults. And they said, but you don't have to have kids in the district. You're an advocate. You're a parent.
That's a really important point, Robin, because I know a lot of people, they think that in order for them to serve, they need to have kids that are actually actively in the school building that they're serving in. So that's right. The point that you're bringing.
Right. And I said, I was trying to get out of it. I was using anything. I was like, yeah, they said, no, we need someone with your voice. And I took the responsibility. I was voted in and I took it. And it was in 2022 was the first time that I ever attended New York State summer leadership. And I wanted to kick myself.
Don't get into any conferences because we're going to talk about that soon.
But I wanted to kick myself because I never attended before. And I had the opportunities. And, they would give it to me, the conference and the convention and New York State summer leadership. And when I went there, the information and the contacts and the leadership was so awesome. I said, what the heck took you so long? So what I have done, I have been the Pied Piper. When I come back to Yonkers and I come back to the district, I let the PTA know, this is where you're going. I said, because the training, I said, you think I'm great. I said, those women, those men up there, they're 10 times better than I am. The resources and the network opportunities and the vendors and everything that you need to make your PTA a successful PTA, it's up when you go to summer leadership. It's up when you go to convention. And I said, I said, why aren't you going? Why aren't you going? And I said, and I would tell them, and a lot of, again, because I remembered when I was my children in the school, it was like, you have to take off, you have to bring your kids, you have to make, arrangements. And I said, see if you want to, maybe you can bring your kids with you. Some of them had a little children that were maybe 12 or 13. I said, maybe you might want to bring them. They have a swimming pool, blah, blah, blah. And almost everyone that has attended since I've attended has always come back to me and said, this was so wonderful. And not only the opportunity of going to summer leadership, but they've implemented the skills and the resources and everything that they've learned into their PTA. So along like with Kathleen, I saw the application and the opportunity to join New York State. And I said, my thoughts are, I want to prepare the leaderships of tomorrow to help these units so that they can be better leaders and they can really instill and learn to do what they need to do to make their units better. And and I'm so thankful to be selected as the leadership training specialist. And the things that I've learned just from you, Mary, and Sonia and Kathleen are invaluable. And then the other members of the governance team, it's really wonderful. It's a wonderful network and wonderful opportunity. And you really see people are passionate about PTA. And it's all about passion about enrichment and advocacy for our kids, and to make sure that every student in the state of New York has the best quality of education that they can have. no matter what level they're at. And that's my PTA story. Thank you.
Robin, we echo your sentiment. We are happy to have you as well. The pleasure is all ours, I promise you. You're such a rich place for information, and it's so much fun to start talking, because once we start talking, we all know, we all get into it. I'll give you my brief background origin story. Similar to you, Robin, my parents were into PTA, especially my dad. He didn't volunteer for a lot of things, but he was at every single meeting that I could remember, to the point that it left an impression on me. And I always remembered, when I have kids, I'm definitely going to be a part of the PTA. I worked full time. I still do. So I went with a couple of my friends, and we went to go see what this PTA meeting was about. We had a lot of fun listening to all the information. Way through the meeting, someone had announced that there was a little bit of debt. They didn't really get into it, but they said, here's a sign-up sheet. Whenever, you feel ready, please sign up. So we all put our names down. We didn't hear from anyone. We went to the next meeting, and we noticed that the debt that they had mentioned last time had accumulated. And when they said the number, it was still with the same minuscule voice. So we were starting to get concerned. The amount went from 1,500 to 3,000 to 5,000 to 7,000. All of us were getting concerned because our babies were in kindergarten, first grade, and they were looking to inherit a debt that had nothing to do with them. So we said, we're working moms. We know how to do this. Let's see if we can help. So I was labeled that mom, because I raised my hand to ask a question, and they were like, oh, Lord, here we go. I said, I have a question. What's happening? Because we're a tax exempt organization, right? So why do we owe any money to the government? Long story short, they said, listen, if you guys want to try, helping us with this, we'd love to have you. And we said, great, because we're all A-type personalities. You point us in the direction and we'll do what we got to do. So we were able to get us out of, ready for that total, $23,000.
Go ahead.
Able to get out of that debt. It was all a matter of talking to the government. They understand that we're a volunteer organization. Most of us don't do this professionally, and they really were very helpful. It's a matter of just, leveraging the people that you have in the spaces that you have to help your PTA or your organization function better. So, we got a little buzz for it. We got excited that we were able to do this. And then we had our first event, and they said, nobody ever comes to this. And we said, trust me, we can get butts and seats. We had about 300 people show up to the event because we were going door to door with flyers. Wow. And the principal was like, guys, you have to tell me when you're going to have this many people at an event. I need security for this. We said, well, don't underestimate us, and that was kind of the story. And I went to, training, and I'll never forget someone saying, make sure that your board looks like your community. And at the time, it didn't. There were a bunch of women at the table, and they looked like, they looked alike. And I said, I think we need some men, and I think we need a more diverse look, because that's what our neighborhood represents. And when we joined the PTA as committee members, they had told us that they were looking for board members. I became VP. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. And eventually I was voluntold into being president, which I'm sure all of you know how that can happen. And it was the best thing that happened to me. I was never afraid of being in public, but public speaking wasn't my thing. And I set a goal for myself to try to use what I do at PTA to help me learn to speak better in public. It's helped me in my career. It's given me so much confidence. My girls are now 12 and 15, and I've always made this fun. Wherever I went, whatever I did with PTA, I never wanted it to be, oh God, mommy's doing that thing again. Mommy's leaving us to go do something else. I brought them with me. They made it fun. So anytime I went somewhere, did something, they already had their bags ready to come too. My oldest is on her PTSA as a secretary. I will end with this. I let her sit at the dais by herself, and I went on the other side. She's like, Mommy, where are you going? I was like, you're on the board. I'm not. This is your thing. She's like, what are you talking about? Where are you going? But she did a great, she's doing great. She's taking notes. And I know it's because of what she saw me do. She was able to see her mom getting involved, doing things, making better choices that would help our school have some more fun, have some more activities, and she wanted to be a part of that. So that's my origin story.